Concerning Him. An Emmaus podcast is a ministry of Emmaus Bible College. Concerning Him seeks to enrich Christians around the globe by educating and equipping them through various media. For more information about Emmaus, please visit emmaus.edu.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Concerning Him, an Emmaus podcast. Today we're joined by Joel Carter. How's it going, Joel?
It's going well.
Joel is the chair of the teacher education program here at Emmaus Bible College, and he's also an elder at Great Adventure Church here in Dubuque. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right.
What does it mean to be the chair of the education program?
It means I do a lot of the paperwork stuff other people think is boring. Make sure our program stays accredited by the State Board of Education, stuff like that.
Okay.
I think it's a thrill.
Well, I'm glad somebody does.
Yeah, most people are.
Well, let's start today by just talking about you, your background. Just tell us some about how you got to where you are now in life here at Emmaus.
Sure. Came to Emmaus in 2009. Always knew I wanted to be a college teacher, a college instructor. Yep. So I came to Emmaus in 2009, and I majored in Bible exposition and exegesis, which I loved. It was totally worth it. Full Bible gamut. And in secondary education, and got licensure in social studies and language arts at the secondary level. Graduated. Met my wife, Jo. We got married before I graduated. I graduated, moved back to where I grew up, and I taught public high school social studies for a few years. Got my master's. Jo and I had couple of girls, and then the Emmaus opportunity showed up. So I'm in my third year now. Came to Emmaus a little over 2 years ago now, and then became chair this academic year. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where'd you get your master's degree from?
Liberty.
What
Yep.
in?
What was that?
What did you study?
Curriculum and instruction.
Okay.
Education, curriculum, and instruction with a social studies history emphasis.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what are some of the classes that you're teaching here at Emmaus now?
I teach classes like educational psychology, intro to education, supervised student teachers as they're teaching, things like that. I teach some methods courses, some upper level methods in teaching secondary social studies, language arts, things like that. Great. Yeah.
Well, we're happy that you're here. We're happy that you're on the podcast today. And today we're going to be talking about busyness. Busyness. Not necessarily how to be busy, more how not to be crazy busy.
Right.
I've recently heard people make the joke that adulthood is just saying this phrase over and over again. It's saying, after this week, things will slow down again.
Right.
And I have to say, I currently resonate with that.
Yeah.
And I know many others that do.
It's not going to slow down, Eric. It won't.
Yeah, I'm sure it won't.
Right.
But it's funny because it's true, right? It's funny because you're like, yes, I definitely experienced that. First, before we get into this, I want to ask, how did we get here? Why is that our mindset? Do you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. So most of the time people say this has always been a problem, right? Mm-hmm. Problems we think are big problems have been around, for thousands of years. I'm sure, that must be true to some extent in terms of busyness, but man, technology, the internet, globalism, we can do so much more. We can do so much so efficiently now that I have to think it's uniquely challenging today for those reasons.
Do you think this is a problem that is more common in the West or specifically in the U.S., or is it happening all over the world? Do you have any insight on that?
I don't know. I guess certainly in the West, I wouldn't think there'd be much difference between, Europe versus the U.S., things like that. I don't know. I think because I link it to technology in some sense and what that's done to the workplace and to every aspect of life, that if you're in places that are behind technologically, it might not be as much of an issue. But in those places, you have other challenges to fill your time. But I guess for us, the clothing on the problem for us is very much tied to technology, and that your email's right there all the time, right? And dinging, and you can go, do. So many opportunities. We think of opportunities for young people to do, any kind of extracurricular they could fathom. So I guess maybe that part of it is unique to our part of the world, or the modern West. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wonder if we're really as busy as we think we are. Do you know what I mean by this?
Sure.
Do you think there's a difference in our society between actually being busy and simply believing that we're busy? Because I know that there have been times in my life personally that I have felt overwhelmed with busyness. And if I sit down and break it down, I'm like, oh, now I feel bad because I just told 20 people about how busy my life is. And yet it's really not all that busy. But for some reason, I feel overwhelmed. Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure. I think so. Yeah. I mean, maybe sometimes there's like a qualitative busyness, like the burdens you have or the things you do are just always weighing on your mind. So you feel pummeled all the time and feel more busy than you are, than your calendar is, or something like that. I think, I guess more often I think there's two general categories maybe. There's people who so much they've built their life to the extent that there's so much me time that they think is indispensable, right? Okay. So the Netflix detox at the end of the day, and the Starbucks run in the morning, and I got to do this and I got to do that. Can't imagine living without those things. And so their schedule fills up. Yeah. And they feel like, young people, I taught ninth graders, it was like, Mr. Carter, I studied all night for that test, right? College students, right? Yeah. I spent all night working on that paper. I remember when I used to say that. And what it means is, I left the dining hall with this paper as the thing I need to do tonight. And over the next 8 hours, spent 3.5 hours working on the paper, and the other portion of the time talking to friends, getting distracted by friends, checking email, watching a quick YouTube video, going and watching half the intramural game. And it's like, yeah, you're not that busy. You're not that busy. So that's one category, yes. I guess. That's the facade of busyness. Yeah. And with maturity, theoretically, priorities change. And you become what I think of as the other category, which is really what I have more in mind when I think about how not to be crazy busy, which is servants of the Lord who want to serve. Yeah. They're not wasting their time on entertainment. They don't need a Starbucks every day. Like, they roll out of bed ready to serve people in the church, at work, their neighbors, and they serve. Say yes, 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 are given more opportunities because they're servants and people know they are, and have a hard time saying no to those opportunities. So those are two very different kinds of people. Absolutely, right? Yeah. And I think my thoughts are more geared towards that second group. How can you be that person without being fried?
Correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like if you're feeling crazy busy, the first step is to say which of those two categories am I in.
Yeah, get a time chart. Yeah. Log, spend a week logging, every 30-minute chunk or 15-minute chunk of your day, and get a realistic view about what's going on. Yeah.
So then let's talk about that second category, because that seems to me, everything you described seems like a good thing.
Right.
Right. If I looked at and there's somebody that I know that's living that type of life, I'd say, man, they're really serving the Lord.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. How can I be like them?
These are all the best people that we know, the most mature, committed people that we know. Yeah.
So then what's the issue? What's wrong with it? What's wrong with it? Why is that a problem to start with? And then how do we solve that problem?
Yeah. Great question. Why is that a problem? It's a problem because I think some people would say it's not a problem.
Yeah.
You've got one life. why wouldn't you give it all you can?
Yeah.
So, fair. My perspective is it becomes a problem when quality goes down and when priorities get mixed up. So quality going down meaning someone asked me to have a discipleship relationship with them, right?
Yeah.
And when someone asks that of a pastor or a mentor, you instantly think of what this could look like, right? And I have a good friend now who I'm in a discipleship relationship with a focus on teaching, right? So instantly think, what books could we read? What would be helpful? What sermons could we watch? What experiences could we create, right? How often would we meet? What would we talk about? And you're thinking high quality, right? It's like the outset of any idea or any ministry, right? You think of what it could be.
Yeah.
And maybe it starts out that way, right? Because you say yes to that person. Well, if two more of those people come along, all of a sudden, you can't do all three that well.
Yeah.
Right? So you start, you say you're going to read a book, but you don't have it read by the next time you meet. They don't either. No big deal, right? God is forgiving. The Spirit's with us. But, time passes and it's like, this isn't all it should be. This isn't all it should be. So you're spread too thin, doing too many things, too many ministries. So you're doing a good enough job that it's not going to crash and burn, right? It's still ministering to people, but the quality's gone down. And I would argue that's a problem. That's a problem.
Well, so then what is the first step then? You're in that place, you're spread too thin, you're trying to do too much.
Yeah.
What's next? What do you do?
Sure. So this gets to part two of the previous question, which is figure out your priorities.
Yeah.
Because the thing that happens besides quality decreasing is that priorities get mixed up. So this would be classic pastor who has no time for his family, right? Like I've heard it said, for some wives, they would be better off if they were a single woman with problems in their husband's church than they are as their husband's wife, right?
Yeah.
Because then they'd get the attention they need because their husband is, right? Things like that can easily get misaligned if you're someone who likes to say yes. So if you recognize this as a problem for you, I guess would mean you're agreeing with my argument that it is a problem, it's something worth addressing. First thing is, when you're in the heat of it, make a to-do list and decide to say no until you're halfway through that to-do list.
Yeah.
Or 3/4 of the way through, right? But more importantly, figure out your priorities. Figure out what you actually want to spend your time doing and do it well. Do it well. And what it would look like to do it well.
Okay.
And that kind of makes things, for me, it makes the extraneous things kind of fizzle away. There's a great article, the most convicting thing you'd ever read on this topic. Eugene Peterson, The Unbusy Pastor. It was a Christianity Today article taken from a book, or it became a book. Anyway, Eugene Peterson, the late Eugene Peterson, who was a pastor, said pretty much he got to the point where he decided his role as a pastor was these 2 or 3 things. I can't remember, what exactly. Prayer, listening, and ministry of the word, something like that.
Okay.
Right? And he decided he wasn't going to do any of the other stuff anymore. The administrative stuff, the little stuff that people expected him to do, but that was like, what am I doing here? It's like when I'm sitting at my desk and spend 25 minutes organizing a Google Drive folder or something. Like, what am I doing? Like how is this? And he ends the article, after laying the conviction on. He ends it by saying he stopped doing those things and wondered if anyone would notice, and nobody did.
Interesting.
Which I think was a point well taken.
Yeah.
And maybe that gets to one of your early questions about feeling like we're more busy than we are.
Yeah.
Are you burdening yourself with things that don't really minister to people? They're important to you. Do you arrive at church an hour before the service every Sunday to make sure every chair is perfectly lined up? do people really care about that? I don't know. No, not really, you know? So that's maybe part of it too.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's hard about this, I feel like, is when you're in the moment. So maybe you've taken the time, you've tracked how much time a day you're spending on each thing. You've made your priority list, and then somebody comes up to you and they say, "I need your help," or "I want to do this."
Right.
Like the idea of somebody talking about discipleship, right? And you're like, that seems like a great thing. I just cleared my schedule. Of course I could add something. How do you know when something is a worthwhile ministry and you're like, obviously it seems like the Lord's calling me to do this, or am I going to be doing them a disservice by saying yes because I really can't pour myself into that?
Yeah, such a good question. So I think, right, you've analyzed your time. You're not wasting your time on Netflix or on your phone or on entertainment, right? You're one of these people who's serving the Lord. You analyze your priorities, right? And you decide, these are the things God wants me to do. So for me, it's my work at Emmaus, shepherding at my church, and my family. I like keeping it simple.
Yeah.
Right? And then sometimes, so I guess part of my answer is set your boundaries before that happens. So for example, how many nights a week do you need home with your wife and kids? Depends on your season, depends on you and your wife, your personalities. Are you high quality time people? Are you not, right? So decide, I've got to be home by 5 for the rest of the night, not doing any work, X number of nights a week. 2, 3, 4, things like that are helpful to me.
Okay.
Because it just lays out the time, because then it's like, you know, so my wife and I are involved in small group ministry. That's a midweek evening a week, right? That's for ministry. And I teach Sunday school, which is a Sunday morning thing. But both of those things pretty much take one evening of prep.
Yeah.
Right? So there's 3 evenings in Sunday morning, right? We want to do hospitality once a week, at least. There goes another evening, right? So we haven't even started talking about the spontaneous relational things, the things that come up in eldership that aren't anticipated, right? So unless you want to be demolished, you've kind of got to say, like, this is it. This is what I'm focusing on. And so then that person comes to you with wanting a formal discipleship relationship or with a new ministry idea, and it would minister to people. It would be good for you to do the prep. It'd be good for that person. You could even do it better than the people you know they're going to go to next, right? Which is true some of the time, right? It'd be a good thing, but you've got to say no. You've got to say no. Because I think something that's helpful for me is Jesus is not going to abandon this person because you say no, right? Even that person, this person is a child of God. Say they're immature, they want to learn, they see you as a mentor, they ask you to disciple them. How could you possibly say no to that? Well, you could say no because you have what you know you need to spend your time on. And if you say no to that person, it's not like Jesus is going to abandon them. Their spiritual maturity is just down the tubes, right? But that's how we feel.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. It's like, how could I say no to such a good thing? Jesus is the person who grows people and changes hearts. Book recommendation, The Imperfect Pastor. Zach Eswine, a friend of mine, one of my best friends, who's also an elder at a church. There's a section of that book especially on the omnis, which is a pastor's temptation to feel like they need to be omnipresent,
Interesting.
omniscient, everywhere and everything for everyone all the time. And she uses the example that Christ, for example, limited himself in time and space, right, when he was on earth, or when he took on human flesh, and that Jesus is the one working in these people. You can't be God to your congregation or your friends. So it's okay. It's okay to say no.
There's danger when we try to take on those incommunicable attributes, right?
Yeah.
Right? But to try to say these are the things, this is the way God is that we can't be, but maybe not intentionally, right? But trying to be like him in this way that we can't be.
Yeah.
That's important. I love church history, right? And so as we have this conversation, I can't help but to think about all of the men or all of the people of church history that you read these biographies on, and it's like they never slept. They never ever once did anything fun. They read every single book possible, right? They're reading all the philosophers, they're reading all the church fathers, they're reading everybody who's writing in their current day. They're poring over scriptures for hours and hours. You read these stories of them just spending 2, 3, 4 hours a day in prayer. And they're doing all of these things. And so you read about these guys, you read these biographies, and I'm so convicted. I'm like, man, my little time spent in scripture compared to, fill in the blank historical person. How could I ever live up to that or that? And how do we reconcile that? How can we make sure that while we're trying to limit ourselves and cut things out and have these priorities, that we don't just throw away our devotion to the Lord and our relationship with him? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think what has been helpful for my wife and I is kind of I think a lot has been attached to, or our understanding, I guess, of modern pastoral work, or modern Christian service has a lot of conflations, a lot of baggage. And so I guess here's what I mean by that for us. So my wife and I we spend a lot of time in church ministry, right? Because I'm an elder, she's an elder's wife. And lots of programs, lots of this, lots of that, lots of relationships. And I think we tend to overemphasize the need for those things.
Okay. So
the program thing is kind of a bigger conversation about, the nature of the church and church structure and stuff like that. So I guess just suffice it to say that the more programs, the better is not a good way to approach it, I don't think.
Yeah.
Right? But on the more personal level, we value community. I mean, talk about buzzword of the decade for what it means to be a real church, right? Yeah. We don't just come and sing and sit under teaching together. We do real church. We're in each other's lives, which is good, right? I mean, you read the end of Acts 2 about having everything in common, breaking bread day to day,
absolutely,
from house to house, and you read through.
They're selling all their stuff and they're living in community. Yeah,
it's obvious that there is a certain level of commitment that means you're engaging with one another way beyond Sunday morning. Yeah. So I'm all about that. But it becomes overwhelming to feel like you have to. Have I called that person this month? Do I know? I don't really know that person, right? And there's a lot of people in the church, right? You can't do it all. You can't do it all. So for us, we've used, here's another plug.
Okay.
All these people, I should be getting free books from these publishers or something. For the millions of people who are going to watch this podcast.
Absolutely.
Yep. We have used the School of the Shepherds, which is Alex Strauch's biblical eldership resources.
Yeah. We just had Dave Anderson on talking about it.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, he does. He's creating some of the curriculum. So for us, we reached this point where it was like, okay, what is eldership really about? What's shepherding really about? And this curriculum just really, they kind of rearranged all the resources on their website into courses, modules. So you watch videos, you read books, excerpts. So incredibly helpful because it takes the explicit passages of the New Testament about what shepherding is, right? So Acts chapter 6, the shepherds want to spend time in the ministry of the word and prayer, which is why they need deacons.
Yes.
Right? The qualifications in Timothy and Titus. Peter, talking about caring for the flock, protecting the flock. feeding the flock, right? Getting down to those basics and devotion to the word as a person, as a man. And so convicting, but so focusing. That's what's helped me. That's what helps me to get those priorities right.
Okay.
So it's like, yeah, we should be. I mean, you want to be a man of God. You want to be a shepherd, an under shepherd under Christ, a shepherd of God's people. You want to devote your life to others. You got to be a person of the book, as Alex Strouk would say, right? Get up early, read the Bible, study the Bible, stay up late, reading the Bible, studying the Bible, right? And these things compete with, sorry, microphone. They sometimes compete with those other things that we attach to shepherding, right? All the coffee dates, all the lunches with people, all the ministry, all the hospitality, all the programs, those can totally compete.
Yeah.
Right? And so you have to say that, no, it's my view that being a shepherd, being who I think I need to be in Christ means devoting X number of hours a day, a week to the study of the word. For not necessarily any particular reason, right? I don't want to be the kind of person who studies for sermons.
Yes.
Right? And not any other time. Right? So it's that kind of refocusing, I think, is really, really healthy, but it does kind of go counter to things. And it's tough. It's tough, but it's good.
I see what you're saying. There's a danger there in saying, I am so busy with my ministry that I've lost time for understanding God through his word, right? And how could I possibly do my ministry well?
Right.
Unless if I'm constantly just being engulfed by the word, right? And swimming in that ocean. Getting fed, taking it in, growing with the Lord. And it's easy to feel like when you're having lunch discipling this person, you're doing ministry. When you're sitting at home, when you say no to something like that and you're sitting at home reading your Bible, it doesn't feel as much like ministry, but it is. It is. And one practical trick, this comes from Eugene Peterson too, is he says we worship the calendar. Interesting.
So the tip is decide that this night is date night with my wife, right? Or these nights are nights at home. This time is time I'm going to devote to prayer or study of the word. And those are appointments on your schedule.
Okay.
So you want to get together? I've got an appointment.
Interesting.
And Peterson points out people won't touch that, right? You say, I was going to go out to dinner with my wife that night. It's like, couldn't you do that another night? I mean, this is really important to me. You could reschedule that, couldn't you? I mean, you and your wife live together, right? That's kind of the sense. You say, sorry, I've got an appointment. Can't make it happen that night. And it works.
Interesting.
I've done it. It works. No one asks questions about that.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, there's your tip.
Well, thank
so now
you.
everyone's going to suspect if I say I have an appointment. Well, I mean, it could be.
It could be.
Sorry, not sorry. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. And
thanks for having me.
Well, I'm actually positive we're going to be getting you on another time.
Sounds great.
Hopefully sometime soon. I'll try not to make your life too busy, though.
No, it's great. I love it. Love it.
All right. Thank you very much, Joel.
You bet.
Thank you for listening to Concerning Him, an Emmaus podcast. Ministries like Concerning Him are possible because of the generous contributions from our partners around the world. For more information about partnering with us, please visit emmaus.edu/partner.